Hi, this is Dr. Michelle Robin with Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience. And I believe if you'll change one thing a month, one thing for the next 12 months, you'll change your life forever. Thanks for joining me on the journey. Well, hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts. I have to tell you, I've got these butterflies in my belly and they started about 20 minutes ago, Liza, and I was thinking, why are you so nervous? And so today I'm delighted to get to share one of the people I think is just the cat's meow. And I've really been admiring her for about, Liza, hard to believe, 22, 23 years.
It's 27 years.
Since I've known you? Wow, it's gone fast. It's gone fast. Well, today joining me on Small Changes, Big Shifts is we're discussing personal transformation. What an opportunity we're having to do that during this COVID-19 experience with my friend Liza Ingrasci. Liza received her bachelor's in developmental psychology from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. You know, we're Rock Chalk fans around here, Liza. You know that, though. She has been with the Hoffman Institute since 1990 and now resides as their CEO. Liza has held executive positions in national seminar corporations with responsibilities for both enrollment and alumni participation. Liza, welcome to Small Changes, Big Shifts.
Thank you.
Well, I know that it's a little bit of a stretch because a lot of people talk to the teachers or the RAS, but you know, you're really the brains behind this whole movement of the Hoffman Institute. Can you share a little bit about it?
Well, yeah, we do a experiential learning retreat. It is a one-week program. We ask people to really completely step out of their lives as they know it and even turn in all the digital devices and actually do what you might call is the deep dive from head to heart, to having the experience of getting to material that we learned before we knew we were learning it. And even if we can intellectually talk about it, we can't heal some original brokenheartedness and some material unless we go through the emotions and go through having a safe space to realize one's story and be heard and be seen. And the teachers are guides and facilitators that allow people to move through the material. Some people call it inward bound. Other people have called it a hero's journey. Mm-hmm. Or the individuation, or working on the individuation that is about becoming whole. And so it's a beautiful course. We have a very high student-teacher ratio so that we are always safe, and it is and people, the community that gets forged is very special as well. It is really heart-centered.
You know, I think it's fascinating. When I brought you on originally, Sean, I did this series called Rhythm and Resilience. And sorry, somebody rang my doorbell. So this is the real life world right now. My dogs are barking, but we've got to continue the show. The show must go on. And so I was hearing my spirit talk with me in 90 days ago when we were starting COVID, and it talked about, Michelle, you've got to find a rhythm to have some resilience through this reset. And we did a series from in the whole month of April, and Sean joined us, who happens to have Kansas City ties, which was super cool. And she said, by the way, we asked at the end of the series, who do you think should be joining us? And we actually did our own little private thing on Zoom. It was not a live feed. And she said, oh my gosh, Liza has done an amazing job leading our company through COVID-19. And that was in mid-May. And then we all know, unless your head's in the sand, of what happened late May with all the injustice stuff happening and the racism. And so I've got to touch on this just real quick while you open the can of words. We got the head to the heart. And what are some of your thoughts on patterns and racism? And I did not prep you with that question, so thank you for taking it.
You certainly did not. Well, what's interesting is that we have taken on with our faculty before all of this happened, really looking to be more diverse and inclusive, because the process, when one finds their emotional freedom and their wholeness, it's beyond. It's so heart-centered, and it's a centering. It's not. And one can deal with some of those more difficult emotions and more difficult awakenings. So one of the things that you do before the process is to do a comprehensive assignment where you get to uncover what are these early learnings, what is this material that you learned, what are the self-defeating patterns of behavior. And we've just taken on a project of adding to our pattern list the patterns that emanate from prejudice and racism and what we learn and what we take on. I don't know if that answers your question, since that's what came to mind.
Well, it's a big question. And I feel like when I went to the process at 31 years of age, that I had this great life, but I kept sabotaging it because I didn't love myself. I didn't think I deserved this life. And so I'm wondering, and I'm curious, and we are similar Enneagrams, and always questioning, what could I do better? What could I know better? How could I serve better? And then how do I help be a part of the solution for our humanity? And I really believe it's my heart's desire to come from my heart and try not to come from fear. And so that's why I was questioning. And you mentioned you added some new questions to the homework before they come, and how go into that. What did you say? How did you add it?
Well, what we did is, the bigger picture of Hoffman is something we call the negative love syndrome. So if you don't mind, I'll do a little, because it's the backbone of the work that we do. So what Bob Hoffman came upon was the fact that human beings, when we're first born, are completely and totally dependent for all of our survival needs, emotional, physical. If we are not cared for, we will in fact perish. And so we don't also develop our intellect until about 7. So there is a time frame for humanity, all humanity. We're all in it together. All humanity. Well, what we're learning is learning how to belong and to love and be loved. And if there's a real or imagined break in the bond, we'll do anything to restore it. And then that becomes an imprint often of what our value is and who we are, because if we got the attention again, we're like, okay, that I need that. I mean, it's a survival pattern. So if there's a real or imagined break on the bond, we'll do anything. And then it's almost as though we're saying, okay, now I'm just like you, or now I did what you wanted, now will you love me? Because we're seeking to learn to belong, and we have no rational thought to be able to discern, well, that mom's just having a bad day today, or they're sick, or they're sad. We take on the material in our family system of how to belong. And so these become self-defeating patterns of behavior. So if we have a critical mom, we might become connected to either criticizing ourselves, being criticized, or finding people in life. How a pattern would work, a negative pattern would be that it would influence our choices, especially when we're triggered. So how we feel about other people, how we feel about ourselves is all part of that. So that's where that comes from, or that's where we have. So when we do the pattern tracing, we have everything from being angry, being sad, being impatient, being whatever. And so we've added a place where people can explore their own sense of how they feel about prejudice and race, color, creed, religion. I mean, you get to surface everything. Does that address it?
It really does address it. And so you were talking about negative love syndrome, or Pathway to Personal Love and Freedom. I've given out that book, as you know, because I order them thousands. I give them out one out every day, or email somebody that book. It's just an amazing, insightful. And I would recommend, we'll put those in the show notes. And Eleanor, if you don't mind doing that, that'd be awesome. By the way, we have shout out to Eleanor. She's managing the back end here so we can deliver. If you have questions on Facebook, please let them know, and Eleanor will get them to me in the chat section. So Bob Hoffman, let's go back to Bob Hoffman. How old is the process? And talk about the Quadrinity.
Okay, the process was developed first in 1967. It was put into a week-long format in 1985, and the faculty at that time and Bob Hoffman Claudio Naranjo, who brought the Enneagram to the States, was part of really seeing the merit in this. And they did it in the week-long program. And once they had it, noticing the depth that one could go to, that people could process and integrate material by not having to live the rest of their lives, have great food, great sleep, everything handled, then people could really do this safe deep dive. So from 1985 through now, we do it till COVID struck, we do we do it in a retreat format. And you know, when I joined Bob and promised to help steward the work, which I did with my husband as well, who was the former the CEO before me and still teaches the process. There may have been maybe 5 a year or something like that, and now we're up to having like 36 processes a year. So,
wow,
it's a precious piece.
So what year did you join the Hoffman, Bob? What year did you join him?
Well, we knew Bob. I started supporting him, I guess, in '88. Raz at '87, and as your note said, '90 was when I really went sort of fully in.
That's a long time. You know, you think about the first process in '85, you've kind of been the mother of it, kind of, as you said, you were here to nurture it and help carry the work forward. You know, I cannot say enough good things about the Hoffman process. I'm in my magic wand world, because, you know, I live a little bit in magic fairyland. I would love to see, you know, our kids be able to go through it. So hopefully we can minimize these patterns that disrupt their lives. You know, for me, a big one was people pleasing, never good enough. And I don't think I'm alone on those patterns. And a lot of people have those patterns, and I still battle them, but a battle's a strong word. I'm still aware of them, but I have some tools to work through that. So we talked about the intellect. Okay. Yeah. And so tell me the rest of the quadrinity.
Okay. So we have a model where there's 4 simultaneously activated aspects of self: your physical self, your intellect, your emotional self, and then one of the deepest connections that one forges in the process is to recognize and reconnect with your spiritual self, or your inner wisdom, your intuitive self. This is not a religious self. It's an aspect. You know, sometimes people talk about, I want myself back. We know there's something really that it is centering and connecting. Well, in the process, you journey every single day to that place inside of you. And so you're taught how to restore and understand and get your own answers and know that it's real, not someone just telling you that. And it is where your capacity to give and receive unconditional love resides. Because, you know, Bob Hoffman's point, he calls negative love. That sounds negative, but what it is love is the most powerful force there is in the universe. And so in the name of love, we would get connected in this way. But, you know what, Bob, the point is you're not your patterns. And the point is to restore wholeness, where also the aspects of self can be working in concert all together. Because when we're not connected, oftentimes we have an emotional self that wreaks havoc, and sounds like we're 6 years old all the time, we're 7 years old, and that voice is sometimes sparring with our intellect, which is very rational and very together and very critical often for people. And so, and they often being disconnected wreaks havoc on our body. So hence mind-body healing as well. Dr. Joan Borisenko is the chair of our advisory council, and talks a lot about how the process is also about mind-body healing. Because when all of this comes together and one re-experiences their wholeness, you have a lot more lot more ability to reach into one's resilience, as you were talking about resilience, and to one's center. And you have tools. So the process is also not magical thinking. It's not a panacea. It is a really comprehensive, I would say, initial healing journey that is unforgettable. So you do learn experientially these powerful tools, that you can use in your life after the process, because it would be unrealistic to think that you're going to handle everything. And also, life is messy. Life dishes up life. You are going to have life. You'll have loss, you'll have pain, you'll have joy. But to know it's okay to feel what you're actually feeling is a gift. And I think of that as emotional freedom, because a lot of ways the patterns live in us is that it wasn't okay to be sad, or it wasn't okay to be mad, or it wasn't okay, or one feels they need to be a certain way to get everyone's love and attention. And it's just not the whole story. So oftentimes people come in great transition times in life, and oftentimes, I guess this is what COVID's done for us. We were really stuck with ourselves. And we've been sent to our room, so to speak. And so it's a good time, and in that transition is to be able to look, because oftentimes when we're a little more vulnerable, we can have an honest look at what we want to heal.
Wow, so much there. You know, I was thinking about the IQ and the EQ, right? And so many people are wicked smart in their IQ, but their emotional intelligence is maybe not as high as it could be, or vice versa. And so I've never really thought about those in that way. I'm gonna have to do a little more deep diving as we're talking about that. And you mentioned love is the most powerful.
Yeah.
That Bob Hoffman believed that. And can you imagine if we all saw each other with loving eyes? And saw the soul instead of the outside? I wonder how much different our world would be today.
Yeah, and I actually think we're breaking open. I think that's a lot of what's going on, that we are, and I hope we seize the moment to realize and look through the eyes of kindness. I like that you said that. It's beautiful.
Well, you know, let's talk about this moment. So I did the math quickly, and you know, I'm very intimate with the process because of Crystal. Plus, I've done the process. Plus, like I said, I'm a huge fan. I've sent as many people as I can. I guess I probably could figure out how to send a few more, especially now with the new system. So if I did my math, you did approximately 30, max 40 processes a year, and there's 40 students. That's about 1,600 people, right?
Yes.
Yep. You've done that for 40, 50 years. You know, that ends up being what, 20, 30,000 maybe. Does that sound right? 100,000.
Yeah.
But how are you jumping on this opportunity, which is one reason Sean said, oh my gosh, she has been brilliant navigating this time to reach more people. And I have always, once I did the process, loved the process. I did the process from two perspectives, Liza, just so you know. I did it emotionally at 31. I probably need to go back and do it in my 50s now to kind of go deeper, because you learn more. And then the second thing is I did it from an intellectual business person. And what was magical for me is watching the whole process. When I put my spirit out here and wasn't in it when I was watching it, it was magical because you open people up before they come through the homework. And so at least they're in a different space of learning about themselves. So they've done that work before they step on the site. And then you open people up more, and then you gently close it just a little bit like a clam, and then you open it up again, and then you clam, and then you open, clam. And I remember, I've had several personal friends do it, and I remember someone maybe left the process, and I was like, oh, you know what, you're not acting like somebody who went through that process, and coming out that they had to leave the process for whatever reasons, just their journey. But I want to tell you how magical it is. Your team is so thoughtful about the way they gently nudge people and hold space for them to make that connection between the head and the heart, which is your voice. So, and thinking about those words, 1,600 people a year max, and now you've had 90 days to kind of rethink it and reimagine the process. What are you most excited about with what's happened and how you're reaching masses?
Well, I think what's really important is the process teaches people, so that everybody on the journey of the process is actually taught how to do their own work. It's almost as though this is the well-worn path of healing. And and each person's path to the light, if you will, or to love is their own. And our teachers are there as guides to help people leave no stone unturned. But also, one of the things I love about the process is that it's student-centered. It's not one person at a time, break you down, put you back together. It's elegant. It's you are on the path simultaneously with some other beautiful warriors in the process. And there are the spaces you move through, as you talked about, is awareness. Then we move to expression. And from expression, we can deeply dive into compassion, forgiveness, and love for self and others. We move through what we call the cycle of transformation. And you learn tools to change the behavior as well. So I lost my train of thought. Oh, the people. Okay, so what you have is with whole students and people who is that if you're what's going to lead your life? Is it going to be your patterns, or is it your newfound sense of yourself? And what the process is like a ripple effect. Each person's process ends up contributing to everyone. When you're on the path of healing, when you see things differently, and also people see and have compassion for the fact that what other people are dealing with is also their patterns. So there seems to be a more compassionate and kindness that people gain from the process in that wholeness. Now, what will happen for us is we're this in person, and we have Hoffman hugs. I mean, let's talk about it. If it's about love, how do you do that? And so we've had to cancel like 10 processes, and we had a process in motion when it all became very difficult. And what I will say is this team, everyone came together and said, what can we do? Not just for us, what can we do? And so we did begin to have our on Instagram and Facebook, we began to have teachers. They're still doing it every morning at 9 a.m. There's what we call a quad check. It's a check into those 4 aspects of self. It's open to everyone. And then at 6 p.m. in the evening, there's gratitude and appreciation. And we're also working collaboratively with My Intent, which is another wonderful work that is that right now at this time is providing gifts of, so it's free, it's just gifted, tools for resilience, tools for love, tools to support you. And so that's our faculty. I can't say enough good things about everybody rallying to do that. We also have created teleclasses about privilege and about our prejudice and about how do we take action. And but I think we've just followed what can we do and the answer and how do we respond. And so we've been responding in that way. And there's been, we're a nonprofit organization. And although what we largely raise money for is scholarships for people, well, we had to sort of talk about pivoting and say we could use some money to get through the time when we can't produce these programs. So that's sort of, and each and every staff member, every person learned how to work from home. I have to tell you, it broke so many thoughts or strongly held beliefs that I had. I didn't know we could do as much as we could do from home and all, scattered everywhere till we were doing it. And then everybody rose to the occasion.
Takes a leader, there you go, takes a leader to allow that and encourage that and hold that space. And you talked about it, some things I want to dive in there. You talked about the 4 areas, awareness, expression, compassion. The 4th one, forgiveness. What's the 4th one?
No, you know something. It's we start with awareness, then we have expression. That's where the telling one story is. Then you sink into compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, and then you can get to new behavior.
Okay, I was thinking I'm missing one, but I couldn't go into my intellect because I'm listening to you.
No,
So
I kind of did it in an unusual way.
Well, you think about awareness, and I think this time is creating for us all to really reflect and become aware. And one of my friends, Wendy Bash, as her teacher said to her, when you're aware, you're halfway there. And so I think that's a magic when you come into the processes of that awareness. And I love the expression and how do you get it out of your body and out of your cells. And then compassion. By the way, Crystal just walked in the room. That's why you saw me distracted there a minute.
Oh, wow.
and then
She probably wants to correct me. She's a teacher, and I'm in teacher territory, and she'll probably want to train me as a teacher.
Yes. So we're talking about the 4 areas: compassion, and then of course new behaviors, and thinking about compassion. I'm going to tell one of my stories with compassion. You know, when I did the process in 1997, October of 1997. Once again, my soul was really hurting, and I was really crashing on my life because I had this great life that I didn't think I deserved. And if I would do more, I would be lovable. And what I found out, no matter how much I did, I didn't feel love, because I just did not have the capacity at that time to love myself. And so it's interesting, when I did the process, here's one of my biggest takeaways. I have 3 or 4 takeaways, and I actually posted about this. It's funny, we're talking about Father's Day. My mother and father got divorced when my mother was pregnant. And the only connection I had with my father until he died was by the phone. And so one of my secret sauces is on the phone. Like, I actually called a patient on their birthday today, and you know, it's just it's a special moment, but that's part of my reason. And I learned at the process that that's one reason why connection by phone is important for me. And then the second thing I really learned there is that is compassion for my mother. I had so much energy around anger with my mother, mostly because I couldn't take it out on all the men that I had 3 stepfathers by the time I was 17. I couldn't take out that anger and resentment on them because they left. And so my mother was there. So I had displaced. And so for the parents out here listening to maybe your kids acting out towards you, maybe part of it is because they don't know where to put the energy. And so I really found compassion for my mother at the process. And I remember, once again, it's like I was there yesterday, Liza. And I remember my soul telling me, Michelle, I picked these parents for you so that you would do what you need to do for your purpose and calling in the world. And that's emotional for me, because I'm being called to just even play at a higher level, even having this conversation live with you, which, you know, it's not, you know, I'd rather be in a conversation at the little Mexican place by your office having this conversation. But I think it's time for the world to really grasp that love is really what's most important. And when you can't love yourself, you can't love somebody else. And so I was able to forgive and build compassion for my mother. And I can remember those 2 instances when I was at the process in 1997. How crazy is that?
I understand it completely.
Yeah.
Because that's where you were able to see you weren't those materials, those thoughts, those patterns. Mm-hmm. And that your mom had a load as well. I mean, she too, you know, needed to survive and needed to be loved. The thing that I think is so interesting is that it's passed on unwittingly. There are terrible things that happen, but the process is not about, I mean, there are also really great parents who did the best they can. In fact, probably all parents do the best they can, and yet they are also have this material and are looking for love, and it's unwitting, or sometimes their acts are acts of omission. They don't, you know, I don't think we know how often we are telling people how they feel. It's amazing. One of the greatest things I think for the process, and you should send this to everyone as well, is we have a feelings list. Because a lot of times we've gotten so reduced into I'm good, I'm bad, I'm okay, I'm not okay, that we don't really know the depth of conveying I'm radiant, I'm joyful, I'm irritated, I'm annoyed. I mean, there are interesting nuances, and being able to feel is an incredible barometer for where you are in life. But the other thing is, a lot of times, what I think is very powerful about the process is oftentimes we find out that underneath it all, we were ashamed, or we have to deal with the fact that we're anchored into this way we thought we needed to be, that to get people's love and attention, and we keep trying to do that. So anyway, I'm not surprised that you remember the situation with your mom. You know, I went to the process for grieving, which I'm a middle kid. I was 6 weeks premature, and when I was born, they didn't touch babies and didn't talk to them. And so I spent time in an isolate. I had outwardly all kinds of everything people would say. You've got 2 kids, you're married 10 years, you're this, you're that. And yet my nanny, who had cared for me as a child, was living with us caring for our children. And she died in my arms in a hospice situation in our home. And I ran smack into a loss that I could not deal with. And I went right into the patterns that I ought to be able to deal with, because I was this strong kid who made everything okay and was brave and got through it. And when I couldn't do that, so here's how it was living in me that much later, when I couldn't do it. And by the way, my parents never said you have to be strong. It is what I internalized. It is who I thought I was. Well, with this huge loss, I was being mad at myself. And I was thinking there was something wrong with me. And I had a 3 and 5-year-old, and they were grieving. It was like their grandmother passing. So I found myself to the process, well, actually, part of my thought process, and here I knew Bob, and I was working there, and all these things. What I ended up really, I thought, well, if I go away for a week, everybody will be better off. That's how in it I was, completely in it. So in the process, for me, I realized I hadn't grieved any loss in my entire life, and that it was a beautiful emotion, and and that it can wash through you. If you're not holding on to 30 years of it, it really is a rite of passage, if you will. And I was able to also really get through all the feelings that there might be if you really are left when you're tiny like that, and having to make it through it, and without having to apologize for anyone. So in the process, it's as though I regained this whole aspect of myself that I didn't know what I was missing till but I realized also, finally, that I had internalized that I was ashamed of myself if I couldn't handle something. So shame was all connected with sadness. And that's, to have recovered sadness is amazing. Doesn't that sound like a funny thing to say when we're looking to be transformed? But you know what? If that's what you're feeling, if that is in the moment, that's an important thing. And we are on the tip of the iceberg of a lot of grief in this country right now. And so that would be a compassionate thing would be, I would hope that we all can allow ourselves in the moment to deal with what there is.
Well, you talked about shame, and we talk a ton about, Brene Brown, who you guys know the Hoffman Process.
Oh, yeah.
Part of it, the shame. There's so much of that similar message there. I was talking with Britt Frank this morning. Britt is actually in Kansas City now. She's from New York. She's going to be presenting at, we have a wellness group of people that get together here, trying to build community so that we could help the planet heal and just create that ripple, as you said. And so trying to do it from the heartland. And it'd be nice to have, the process in Kansas City. I'm just plugging that again, Liza. I have to do it every time I'm with you. To say that we need to have the process in Kansas City.
You have a teacher there that doesn't have to travel. There you go.
There you go. We got a teacher here. We just got to get a few more teachers here that don't have to travel. We have a Hoffman group. But we were talking today. We have a July 8th meeting. It'll be our first meeting in person since COVID. And we have a limited number. So anybody that's in the Wellness Consortium, you're thinking about coming, you're going to want to sign up if you want to be in person. Otherwise, we'll be doing it virtual as well. But we were talking about shame, the shame of am I prejudiced? The shame of I'm white privilege, the shame of why am I not handling this better? Or the shame of why am I not taking advantage of it? So shame is such a big issue. And then you pile grief on top of that. Holy sugar.
Oh, yeah.
Holy sugar on that. When I think about when I went to the process, Liza, what I remember feeling and seeing in my practice was I call the walking dead. People coming in and we're going through the motions and we're getting up and we're going to work and we're doing our thing there. And then we're, going home, maybe working out, having dinner with our family or playing games, and then getting up and doing it all over again the next day with really not a lot of emotion and a lot of intentionality in it. And what the process did for me, it woke me up. I was one of those people. And now I could see it. I can just look right in your eyes and go, oh, that part of them, they're just not connected. And it's not a judgment. It's just that once you feel alive, you want people to feel alive, right?
Absolutely.
That's what's so cool about the process. Talk about a family affair. You know, you said Raz was the CEO before you, and then now your daughter's involved. And I think Mike's been involved at some
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Talk about how you feel about having your family involved.
Well, I'm glad it shows the process works.
Yeah.
You know, it's made just an enormous difference in our lives. We had been married 10 years when Raz took the process first. Bob Hoffman asked him to run the company. He realized he needed day-to-day support, and Raz invited me to help put some structure around enrollment. But you know, Raz became a teacher. You know, it's a labor of love. It's been tiny for a long time. And what we found, I'll just say it's grown very organically. That's what I'd say about the family affair. It's very organic. We decided to become a nonprofit so we could reach more people. And then that's been really good because it really does, and it's available to more people. Our daughter chose to become a teacher at a time when we didn't even know she was interested, although she was an awesome coach and had a lot of other things that were conducive. I thought it was very brave of her. It's a really tough thing to create being able to stand on one's own merit when you're the kid of the two people running it. And she's a brilliant teacher. But I think what it is, you know, my feeling, the process made a big difference for me in parenting when I really got to see that I was parenting in one way is about growing a human being. It's not my life, it's her life. And it allowed me to learn that I needed to not have it always be about, am I doing this right or not? And listen more carefully. Now, I didn't do anything perfectly. You remain human when you do the process. I was able to tell her at different times when she was upset, there's a pattern here. I'd like to tell you about how this thing turns out. And so in case you want to think differently, but, and our son has done the process and, they've helped us with social media but it's not that there's not a should about it. It's just, it actually has happened really very organically.
You know, I'm thinking about the process and not only just your family, but all the families it's impacted. Can you share a story, maybe a surprising story? Because the process, like you said, thousands of people have done it. You're in Northern California. You've kind of become self-help for many people around the country, especially you know, I love Crystal's analogy. You can have somebody who's flown in on the private jet, and you can have somebody who's put it on their credit card or maybe got a scholarship to attend in a class. 40 people, and I'm still in touch with one of my Hoffman sisters, by the way, which is super fun. But talk about the diversity of the group, and then tell us a story about maybe a success story about somebody who came to the process.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
I know that's there's many, but
well, I can tell you it is I think a fun and very freeing aspect of the process is that we actually do have people come in and we ask them not to share who they are in the world or what their profession is, so that you have that sense of you're coming into it and you don't have to lead by who you are in the world, and you don't, or you don't have to be judged by that. We also ask people not to talk about politics or sports either, just so you know, since that sometimes is that. So I think, so there's a quality, I would say, in every class of different age groups, different genders, different ethnicity, different background, different religions. We actually did the Hoffman process for a number of years with the Center for Public Leadership at the Kennedy School. And in that group of people, we had more, I mean, it grew us. We learned so much by having so many more backgrounds there, and from different countries and cultures. Let's see, you want a success story? Well, I mean, the types of things that happen for people, you know, there are times where people have been estranged from the rest of their family for a very long time, and as part of the process, they reunite. It's beautiful to see parents and children coming together. There are, uh, another really great one. This one's great. There was a gentleman who did the process, and he was someone, we're very good for mild to moderate depression. He had been really moderately depressed for some time, and the process was completely freeing for him. And he shared with me that he had gone home for Christmas after the process. And one of the things he observed was that the family had come over to him and they were like going, "Oh, how are you?" As though he was that depressed person. And he actually saw how his patterns lived in his family. So he said to me, he had to sort of reacquaint himself with everyone and say, "I'm back," or "I'm here. Don't worry." You know, I mean, it was like an expression of a new beginning. But that's how, for me, it's very powerful to see how he could see how he was held and he had to sort of like reintroduce himself. So.
Well, yeah, you know, for me, I remember I had not stayed with my mother in her house since I was probably 18. And just about 5 years ago, I actually spent the night in her house. She lives in Florida. And my spirit said, "Oh, sister, you have healed another level." Because I didn't get a hotel or stay with a friend. I actually stayed with my mother. And I was probably late 40s. And so it's just this magic that keeps working. Like I said, there's so much good. I'm gonna actually have to ask. I know that there's some people on the show today listening on Facebook, or people that'll listen to this later. If you feel like you want to tell a little bit of your Hoffman story, I would love for you to feel free to share that in the show notes. You just never know how your story is going to impact somebody else, especially now since there's opportunity to plug into the quad checks and the gratitude checks on Instagram. Liza, I'm going to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer this, but I want to plant this seed. I'm going to be following up with you. You said you guys are doing something around prejudice, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask to maybe see how long does that process take?
Well, we did it as a teleclass. I don't think that another one that is scheduled quite yet, but I'll have to get to you about when we're going to do them again. We did several of them. There were over 100 participants each time, looking at our white privilege and our prejudice, and what are the patterns associated with that, and beginning to have the conversation openly. Okay. Well, but I don't think there's one scheduled at the moment, but I'm sure from this moment we're going to do another one. And they were open to grads and non-grads. These things are doing, by the way, our other pivot, just to let you know, is we did invent some virtual courses, and the material and the teachers are that powerful that even with Zoom, we are getting amazing people feeling like they have been able to. You can't do the process on Zoom, but you can do a 2-day intensive and get a tremendous amount of value. Or you can be a grad that does a 3-day virtual. And there is another element we're learning about, is it's interesting when it's in your own home and you make your own sacred space to do your own work in your own home. So that's awesome. But we'll make sure.
We're going to talk about that. That's like, again, my intellect saying, okay, how do we reach more people with this? Such as, the topic, especially as we're going into, not only do we have COVID, we've got all the prejudice stuff, and then we've got an election year. And then we have the mental health crisis we were already in a crisis prior to this. So it's just, we are prepped, as my friend Carol Phillips says. So Carol, I know you're probably listening to the replay of this, Dr. Carol Phillips, one of my sweet mentors, chiropractic legend in my mind. She said years ago, there's contractions before every birth. And so we're in a major contraction right now, and the birth coming out on the other side. We just have to make sure that we don't get lost in the middle of it. And we're able to have some self-care. That's what she says about contraction. So once again, if you've done the process, I would love for you to share in the show notes of the Facebook of how it's impacted you. I know I have some friends Liza, you know this because I send them to you and you talk to them, and then 10 years later, you're still talking to them, and they'll say, why didn't you tell me to go? And I'm like, well, I kind of encouraged you. I never tell people what they need to do because it's their journey. I just love to give them some tools and some resources. What other resources can you recommend for our listeners today on personal transformation?
Wow. That's a big question. I'm not sure I know what you're asking.
So we talked about the Hoffman, some resources you guys have through Instagram. You're doing some of the classes.
Yeah.
Where do Hoffman people go to? Where do the Hoffman teachers go to get some more resources? I know that you are bigger than Hoffman. What are some of the other connections?
Right. Well, I think we could come up with some book recommendations that lead you to. Certainly Brene Brown is amazing. Certainly there's a book that teachers really love called The Body Keeps the Score. There are, I would say that exploring self-care is really important. Things specifically are not sort of coming to mind like a specific thing, but first of all, to recognize you're on a path and see what's attracted and what's happening. Certainly listening to and always being a part of Michelle Robbins, Dr. Michelle's material. But I think looking within and getting to know oneself is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and just continuing to tap into either books or I believe you said, was it Intent? What's the name of the group that you're sharing some stuff with?
Intent. A gentleman named Chris Pan is actually, that's a success story from the process. In the process, he had this vision of the power of knowing words and the power of what's your word, who are you, and what's your word. And so what he came up with is asking that question and then creating a little, it's like a totem. It's a bracelet, or having your word with you as being an important piece. So he was bringing people just on that. He's reached so many people with just beginning to know what you're feeling, or are you peace, whatever the word is for people. And now what he's done is to create a platform, it's myintent.com, that has curriculum, not just Hoffman curriculum. He's gathered together a tremendous number of people who, like twice a day, Hoffman teachers do something called Conversation Lab. That's great. These are all free. But then he has yoga classes. He has, I just can't even think at the moment of all the different ways, but it's a lot of curriculum and it's all free. So that's something that would be really important. Because I think some of why people, you can only do work when you're ready to do the work. And when you're reclaiming yourself or nurturing yourself. So and different people need different things. So I think it's looking within and beginning to get to that quiet place and asking oneself, what do I need, is a good beginning. And then there is material. I recently did a 3-hour series with David White. He's a poet and a transformational author, and that was incredible. And he's always got ongoing work, and he had to do it all by Zoom now as well.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see how much we shift. That's a whole nother conversation. I want to recap kind of what you said with Chris Pan. And once again, we'll have that in the show notes. What's great, if you sign up to be getting the information about these podcasts, this show will come out on the podcast next week. We're doing it live right now. But if you sign up, you'll actually get a little sheet that'll give you the show notes with all these resources. There'll be some in the, of course, Facebook notes because Eleanor's on it today. So you'll have that as well. Eleanor giving you a thumbs up there. Sean, Fred, let's see, who said this? Freddie, I think he's your cousin. Freddie.
Yes.
Uh-oh. Yes. Is it Kamosi? How do you say it? Camozzi. Freddie, I'm so glad you brought this up. I say this all the time. It's 10 years of therapy in a week. And I've done a lot of therapy, and there's times that I need to do more, probably even today, as I'm sitting here thinking about some of my challenges and my opportunities to grow, not only through COVID, just in that, how do you go to the next season of your life and let go and trust the process on that. So Freddie, I agree with you. I wish I would have done it sooner. I'm not sure I could have handled it much sooner than 31, but if you're on the fence trying to figure out how to really be your best version of yourself, I'd highly recommend the Hoffman Process right now, whether it's plugging into the Quadrinity quad checks on Instagram, taking the 2-day retreat that's open to everybody. What are you calling it? 2 days? It's not a retreat. What's the 2-day weekend?
It's called Hoffman Essentials. It's a 2-day intense, it's done on Zoom, so it's a virtual retreat, limited home assignment where we're not trying to purport that you can do the whole process, but you can get really access to your lovability and to yourself and to a community. I think one of the things that's so important about everything now is for people to know they're not alone. I mean, one of the things that's really important in any group work, I think, is that you are in a like community, you're more able to be open in that way.
And share, and that's so true, where no one goes it alone. That's what we talk about in my book, The E Factor, Engage, Energize, Enrich, and Tribe. Tribe is super important. I'm grateful for my Hoffman tribe. I'm grateful I could call you and you could say, okay, I'll do it. You sure you don't want somebody else? No, I really wanted you today.
I did say that. I did say, are you sure?
And
I had to use all kinds of tools to get myself settled and be here with you.
Well, I'm so grateful you said yes to this conversation today. We're going to start to wrap up, and Laura, thanks for sharing your story about your journey to the process. I really appreciate that, and I'm grateful I get to share the journey with you. For me, Liza, I had a full life before the process at 31. But now I have an enriched life with people that are just part of my heart. I could weep for some of their stories of how they were able to truly become better parents and be able to be better grandparents, or be able to show up better for the people they get a chance to serve. The work you're doing is nothing short of a miracle. So I'm going to give a shout out to all the Hoffman facilitators out there. Thank you for doing your own work so that you could be in the pain with people. It takes a lot of energy to sit with people in their pain. And it's I guess you can hear my voice. It's emotional because it's hard work, and you've got to have the courage to do your own work so you can sit in with people. So Liza, I'm going to start to wrap up the show. And what I want to ask you is, if you had a magic wand, what would you do for the world?
Wow. Oh, seize the moment and have a miracle where we can break down the walls of systemic racism and really, really, and take on climate change. I think the first step is the awareness and recognition that it's real, so that the really important and knowledgeable people, along with all of us, can get at it. It's really important. And it really is about all of us, and we are equal. And anyway, it's a big wand.
Well, and I think it's also the hate. I'm going to use the word racism as hate towards yourself. And the hate towards yourself, where you overeat, or you have to medicate with drugs, or you have to medicate with porn, or you have to medicate through whatever the case may be. And so how could you love yourself more? And so I'm going to tell you my magic wand. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say the other thing that one recognizes in the process is that when we don't do our work, we often transfer all of our material onto the people around us. And I'd love to see that load be put down so we can be current with each other. So
current with each other. That's a new way of thinking. So here's my magic wand, because it involves the Hoffman process. I remember several years ago that Crystal had the opportunity to go to New York to work with at Hyde. I don't know if it's Hyde Kids or I don't know.
Hyde School, sure.
Tell me about that process, because it won't leave me alone, and that's how I know that is part of my assignment, is because it just won't leave me alone. And I don't know how many years ago that was, but I think about it every single week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Hyde School, a gentleman named Joe Gald, although he became Joey Gald after the process because he reclaimed a childhood nickname in his joy. He is an educator, and he had noticed something like Bob Hoffman had, negative love. He didn't call it negative love, but he had noticed the interference with children's learning from the history and material, emotional material from their parents. So that as an inhibitor for a child really learning fully, and also and mostly the kids that gravitated there were kids that had some kind of behavior, what people called a behavior issue. And so he put together a boarding school first, and now charter schools, where part of being in the school is the parents and kids doing emotional work together, getting in communication, getting current, if you will. And they call the process Hyde on steroids. Mm-hmm. He had discovered this. And so we did the process on their campus, and not with the kids, because we don't have that version yet, but with a number of the administrators and staff. And of course, it made a huge difference. It's their principles as well. It just gave them another tool, is what I would say. But we have raised monies for educators to do the process, because can you imagine when you can see the parent and the child through compassion, when you can see that whole, and come from a healing place, if you will, it does transform education. And so it's like the drops in the bucket kind of thing. So that's Hyde School, and it's amazing.
Well, my magic wand would be a lot of Hyde School, okay, where they get a chance to reconnect to their spirit and their soul and what they're here on planet Earth to do. At the same time, combine the wellness components, which you guys did a great job of feeding us healthy, but creating the whole quadrants of well-being with the Quadrinity, so that we could help heal this generation. We have a foundation called Big Shifts Foundation. The goal is to make generational change to 5 to 30-year-olds. And people are like,
nice.
How is such a big range? Well, like you said, the intellect's not, till about 7, right? You get started on the intellect. You're just looking for love in that first part. And so how do we help people heal so that when they have babies? I met with a young man yesterday, and it made my day. I had this interesting day, Liza, and I'll start to wrap up the show to get you off on time. But when my days has a gap, I'm always like, okay, universe, what do you have on tap for me today? And I got this email on Monday night from a young man at 11 p.m. And he said, I went to my doctor, and I've got low vitamin D, I've got low this, I've got low that, and I'm 28 years old, and I'm depressed, and I got a new wife, and I just don't feel good. And I saw somebody who's his age, and she said, you should go see my wellness doctor. And then I saw my entrepreneur mother, who's older than me, and she said I should go see you. So would you take me on? And I said, well, I happen to have an opening today. The next morning I responded. And I thought, and it just totally made my day, because this was this 28-year-old African-American man who just has such a powerful story. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I had Hyde on steroids with the quadrants of well-being over on top of it, holy moly, would we change it. So my magic wand world is to combine those worlds together. And I am, as you can tell, it's part of my soul assignment, because my heart is beating so fast right now. So Liza, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a joy. It's been, I learn, and I love you and what you're doing so much.
Okay, well, we're going to get Hoffman in the heartland, so we can heal the planet from the middle. I like to end with a quote. Did you happen to pull a quote that you'd love to share with the group today?
Did I?
Yeah, do you have one that you want to share that you live by or anything? We might not have cued you with that.
I was going to say, if you did, I don't recall. Let's see.
Any come to mind? If not, I've got one.
Okay, go for it.
All right. Hey, to all of you out there, thanks for joining us today. There'll be some show notes. Sean, thanks for agreeing to give us some resources, the feelings, the pathway to personal freedom and love, also known as the negative love syndrome. We'll have access to those for you. We'll have some resources where you can find the Instagram Instagram page for the Hoffman Institute. I know there's many ways to self-love. This is just a path that I'm thrilled about. If you've been following me very long, you know that we had Frank Ferrante on, Sonia Choquette, Sonia Tolley, and somebody else on that was talking about the Hoffman process through their journey. So if it feels right for you, go for it. If it doesn't, hey, tell me about what you're doing. I'd love to share that as well. Here's my quote for the week. When you learn, you teach. When you get, you give. So go out and learn how to love yourself more so you can teach more of that. And when you get, give. And hopefully you'll find this podcast giving back to you because of so many people that have given to me, like our guest today, Liza Ingrasci. All right, blessings to you all. Have a wonderful day. I sure appreciate you listening to Small Changes, Big Shifts. If you go to the website, smallchangesbigshifts.com, we'll have the show notes ready for you there. If this episode inspired you to make a small change that will lead to a big shift, please share with a friend. You can catch our episode on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. And if you feel like it, please leave a rating or a comment. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch our episode next week. Blessings to you.